Good morning, everyone. We're going to start a great session on customer experience. I just want to do a slight bit of housekeeping. We are going to have a mic sort of available for you guys around the room, but I will also suggest that if you want to just talk at the top of your lungs, that would maybe expedite the time around mic exchange. But just know when if you have questions, we have a mic. But let me start by saying I am so excited to be up here with two great folks to talk about customer experience. I thought Rob really set this up pretty well earlier when he sort of talked about gaps between, at times, what we may believe our customers feel about our organizations and what they actually do feel, and how do we, as organizations, close that gap. And I think that is on one hand, maybe a simple thing to think about. Maybe there are obvious things that we can do, but as I have learned from our panelists here, there's some complexity to it. And there is some science to it as well as art. And I'm excited to sort of explore that a bit with you all today. So I'm going to just slightly warn you, a little warning here. I would love a little bit of audience feedback in a couple minutes just around a real basic question. So I'm prepping you a little bit, like, get ready, but nothing scary. But let me first introduce our panelists. To my left is Lisa Omasta. Many of you know her. Longtime industry veteran. She's an innovative change agent and leader in the the K-20 for-profit space. She's spent a lot of time in product management, marketing, product development, team development, P&L management, customer experience, and ops. About 20 years in the industry, so great experience. She is currently VP of Customer Experience and Ops at Fuel Ed, and she's held leadership roles at some wonderful organizations, McGraw-Hill, E-Instruction, Laureate. So please welcome Lisa to our panel. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Ken Nelson. Ken's also an industry veteran, spent many, many years leading in our space. He's an executive leader with 20 years in tech ed sales, running direct and indirect teams at a national, regional, and international level. Currently VP of Customer Experience and Innovation, and previously held leadership roles at It's Learning, Promethean, Apple, and much more. So let's welcome our two panelists before we get started here. Welcome, guys.
The obligatory wave.
So when I was first talking to Lisa and Ken about customer experience, I sort of thought a bit about, I had a kind of a gut, visceral reaction to what that meant and what I believed it to be. And again, in talking to many folks, I learned that it's a lot more than what I think I initially thought. And we would be interested to start this session to get some baseline from all of you around just what does customer experience mean when you hear the term. When you see Lisa and Ken at the cocktail party last night and they tell you a bit about what they're doing, what are you thinking about in terms of customer experience? And how would you generally define it? What does it mean overall? Because I was enlightened a bit when I my first impression versus what Lisa and Ken have kind of taught me about this overall. So I would love a couple folks to pop up and just give us a sense of what does customer experience mean. And we've got Phil Donahue walking the floor with a microphone. And we'll be scribing as we go.
Since Frank Catalano isn't here, I'll be the one up to the mic. I'm Glenn McCandless, Focus Marketing. To me, it really is an emotive response to the brand.
Great. Who else?
Hi, my name is Chax. I'm with Blooms. We are actually think that the customer experience is essentially the new way every user is interacting with your product, brand, and naturally that drives the business. In fact, we believe in that so much that in the last 6 months we have only focused on how do we make sure that every user that touches our product becomes eventually an evangelist for our product just because they're so much in love with the product and the experience that we offer to them. So, this is a great session, and I would like to see how we can make this a more interactive way to learn, because I think, most of us have touched, great experiences with other products in other parts of our lives as parents, teachers, educators, and so on. But when it comes to the education technology, I think there is a lot to be desired, and I would love to see more interaction here. Thank you.
So your definition is the customer interaction with the product directly. Just so we can encapsulate it here, it's specifically how they engage with your product. Okay.
Great.
Who else is brave? Anybody?
Yeah, well, behind you, Derek.
I kind of had the same definition, but I would add to that not just the product, but any product support and surrounding information around use or adoption of the product.
Great, great. Okay, any other input in this right now? I think there's some great points you all have made. Let me turn to the panelists and maybe ask, how'd the group do?
Well, I think it's a good start in terms of the conversation. You know, when I think about client experience, I kind of think of a story that I think about all the time. How many of you have been to the Palmer House Hilton in Chicago? It's like my favorite hotel of all times. And I go there every time I go to Chicago. And I walk in, and I probably at one point over a year went there at least once a month. I walk in, I got my suitcase behind me, right? And I walk in, what's the first question they ask me? How can I help you? I'm here to check in, actually. That's why I brought the suitcase. So I think about it from the perspective of the next question they ask me is, have you stayed with us before? So they're looking at my name, they're sitting in there in the system, and it's a hotel that I've been at hundreds of times, and they're asking me if I've ever been to this hotel before. It's a little disheartening because, you know, you're spending probably $200 to $300 a night to stay there. On the flip side, there's a great pizza place, which none of you have probably ever heard of, called the Cottage Inn in Columbus, Ohio. And when I was living in Columbus, Ohio, I would make a phone call to the Cottage Inn, and they would go, hello, Lisa, welcome back. Would you like your regular? Within a minute, this company is charging me probably $15 for a pizza and know more about me than the Hilton that I've now spent $300 a night at. And so when I think of the customer experience and I think about what that means to all of us, it's what my expectations are. So I always hear the word great expectation. And I always say, stop talking about a great expectation, because my definition of a great expectation and yours are fundamentally very different. So if, as an organization, when Rob talked about is this huge disparity between what our customers want for the customer experiences and what we want, and what we actually deliver to them, often comes down to this definition of great. And when I think about the customer experience, it's really around delivering the basic expectations of that customer. It's not the bells and whistles. It's not the frills that come with it. It's making sure as your customer experiences your company across all departments, from marketing, from sales, to product development, to billing, to your website. We're not even talking human beings, right? Every element that they talk about, that it's a consistent experience. And consistent is the piece I think about for an effective customer experience is two words. Consistent in terms of making sure you're doing it, and then meeting their expectations. So the only other example, and then I'll hand it over to Ken, is I think about the airline industry. Most of us flew here. Most of us probably have some loyalty to some airline. And chances are, when you think about a consistent customer experience, so I'm a huge Southwest fan, huge Southwest fan. And when I think about Southwest, 9 times out of 10, they deliver me on time with my luggage every day, every time I fly. Now, do I get frequent flyer miles? Of course I do. But I don't fly with them because I get frequent flyer miles. I fly with them because they consistently deliver me to my location on time with my luggage. So if we fail to consistently meet the minimum expectations of our customers, all the rest is gravy and it doesn't matter. And so when I think of client experience, I think of those two things: consistency and meeting their basic expectations first and foremost.
That was brilliant. That was really good. No, so for me, I would go back to it's one thing. It's relationship, right? It is the interaction with your product. It's the relationship with your product. It is the relationship to your brand. It is the relationship to your accounts payable department. It is your relationship. And the way we know we build those relationships is about setting expectations and then delivering on them. Having a phenomenal customer experience is about establishing credibility and relationship with your customers, be they internal or external. So the question you have to figure out for yourself, as you develop your organization and as you develop your strategy for how you're going to go to market, has to extend beyond just how are we going to sell or how are we going to build the best product. It has to look holistically. Part of one of the things that I love about this marketplace is the passion that everybody lives and breathes, the people that are in this room and the people that are in the schools that we serve. We're so fortunate to be able to support and serve from this side, from the vendor side of the desk, the same goals and objectives that our customers have. We're incredibly blessed to be able to do that. Finding people that can authentically carry that message and build those relationships authentically is really critical. The reference that you give about the hotel that recognizes you, or the hostess that knows your name, or somebody that just goes that extra mile for you is critical. I mean, if you have a problem, what do you rely on? How quickly you can solve the problem? Or do you rely on the relationship to carry you through the hard time? And so that's, for me, the idea of the customer experience is not isolated to one department of the organization. It is the organization. It is the culture of the organization. It is a living entity that we all must identify and understand how our market perceives what we do and understand our values, how we communicate that, how we set those expectations, and then how we live up to them. Because we're known by what we do, not by what we say. So
that's great. Thanks, guys. So if we think about sort of, let's agree that customer experience is something we need to focus a lot on and needs to be central to our business strategies. How do we begin to understand where we are in the customer experience? Like, many of the folks in the audience might think, they're crushing customer experience right now. Some may have concerns about where they are. How do we begin to understand where we are? Are there indicators that you guys look at?
Yeah, so in my mind, you have to look at leading and lagging indicators. And one of our favorites is always, I'm going to do a customer survey, right? Isn't that what we do? We do a customer survey, or we look at our renewal rates to find out how we're doing. If you do a survey, who do you get? The people that love you or the people that hate you? But what about that middle ground of how do you address those guys? How do you motivate and inspire them? So what we did is all of those things. And I think it's important. We talked about saying this when we started kind of discussing the panel. We're in progress. We don't have this solved. But we can tell you from our experiences the things that we've done. At Novation, we are incredibly blessed because we have a leader that exudes this desire for the customer experience. What we've done is an impact study. We've sent out surveys to our customers and gotten feedback, and we've crunched those numbers and crushed them and beaten through them and said, okay, now what do we do with these? How do they guide us? We've done a detailed analysis of our inside teams to understand, I've done time studies with them to understand how much time they spend in 10 different key categories of their job, to understand where they're spending their time and where they're getting stuck, and how can we improve their training to improve our customers' experience. And all of that's crazy because you have to do it, but it's still pretty intangible. You haven't really changed anything yet, right? So I think the first thing you have to do is go out and start doing that. You have to interview your customers and understand how the market's changing around your product, and make sure that your company, not just your sales team, understands that message. There's a great book, and I've forgotten the author just under the pressure of everything, but it's called Turn the Ship Around. And the whole message behind the book is empowering your leaders, empowering your teams to be leaders. And the whole idea of it is, let me give you the tools you need to be successful. So not just in your sales team, but across your organization, making sure everybody is sharing the same voice to make sure that they understand the importance of driving that customer experience, defining it, and then setting those expectations.
So to add to that, is anybody familiar with the customer effort score? No? So there is this, how many of you are familiar with the Net Promoter Score? So Net Promoter Score, or I'm sorry, the customer effort score is actually a new score that's probably about 10 years old that some very smart folks in Harvard identified. And it's the score measure that we use at Fuel Education to define the customer experience, to figure a baseline. And we've just implemented it. It's fairly simple, very much like the Net Promoter Score, where you ask simply one or two questions. And if you think about what Rob said this morning about 5,100 points of input, and it's kind of creating that. So we can talk to our customers, and we do a lot of that. We interview our customers. We have our customer satisfaction survey like many of us do. The customer effort score is actually embedded in our product and our solution throughout the process, from our website all the way through our billing into our actual infrastructure of the product we sell. And we ask two simple questions with that. We ask people on a scale from 1 to 7 to rate, 1 being, on a scale from 1 to 7 to rate their level of effort to working with us or doing that function. And so by asking them that question, easy is basically the concept behind it. And oftentimes what you see in education is they will pick, educators, as most of you know, will pick easy over, a lot of robust functionality. And so we're thinking about that from a customer experience perspective. We identified our baseline using our customer effort score. And so we embedded these questions throughout our processes, asking our customers at various times. The first question being, how easy is it, or how would you rate your level of effort in doing this activity or working with us as a company or whatever activity they're doing? And then we ask them the question, what's your expectation of how hard this should be, how easy it should be to work with us? And so if they say it's a 3 to work with us and their expectation is a 5, we don't have a problem. We're delivering. But if they say it's a 3 currently today to work with us, and what their expectation is a 1, then that enables us to point where we're going to start first. So by spreading that first and foremost across our entire life cycle of our product and the life cycle of our customer, we're able to identify not only what we think is the problem areas, but what our customers do. What we actually found is that things that we thought were not problematic turned out to be problematic, and things that we thought were real big issues, customers actually expected that to be hard. And therefore, it wasn't necessarily a deterrent. And so we were able to specifically identify, and as Ken mentioned, we're in the beginning phases of it, but that benchmark basically said, hey, here's the red flags, here's the places, because there's so many issues within a customer life cycle that you can address, and you have to be able to prioritize. And so that enabled us to say, all right, what are the 5 or 6 that we're going to hit on first, and created that baseline for us.
I would imagine that there's a cultural dynamic, and I envision the two of you sort of presenting some findings and sort of talking about how you might remediate issues. And I imagine there's a lot of time you spend thinking about how does that effort infuse itself in the culture of your organization. And speak to us a little bit about how that has kind of come into the way you guys have changed the overall experience for clients in your organizations.
Go ahead. If you'd like. I always default to.
So one of the biggest challenge I've seen with client experience is that it starts at a department level. And as I mentioned this morning, if anyone was there, I said it's like apple pie. No company will argue that client experience isn't important. Everybody thinks it, right? You go to your product development team, they're going, how do we create a great client experience? Everybody's saying it. Marketing's saying it. And what do? They each create their own client experience. That's exceptional, probably. But what happens is our customers don't experience us this way, right? They experience us this way across our different departments. And so it really has to start at the top. And it has to be a part of the foundation. It has to be a part of what you think and breathe and talk about. And the most senior people in the organization, if they're not bought into it as more than just brand or more than just, something nice to say, it has to be a part of the DNA of what you're thinking about. And so one of the things that we talked about when I first got to Fuel Education were, what do we want a consistent customer experience to be? And so starting with that, and we got all the departments together and said, okay, getting all of our customer research, what would be the 3 pillars that we would truly want to define an exceptional customer experience with? And how would we then apply that across the organization? So once we identified those 3 pillars and then used our customer effort score to say, okay, here's where we are today, how do we then fix that across the different divisions? But we created a scorecard. So there's a scorecard back there that everyone in the organization is visible to and owned, and there's an organizational goal aligned to it, because it has to come from the top.
Ken, any thoughts from the Novation experience or other?
Yeah. I think, speaking of culture, how many of you have had a guy in your office, and it might be one of your leadership team, that always says, I'm all about the customer. I'm all about the customer. But in the process of being all about the customer, he's destroying your culture, right? We've all seen those guys, right? So what she said, plus, that's pretty good of me, right? The thing I think is really important, and I always go back to it, is you got to hire people that believe it. You know, there's different type of people to serve in this market. We're not all selling, you know, ERP systems or warehouse management systems, though we may sell some of those things. We're selling to a marketplace that has a very defined personality profile and a very defined mission behind them. And so hiring people that can internalize authentically and relate and communicate in that way is really, really important. Because my guy that was doing that was destroying the relationship between my professional learning department, who was then carrying animosity into the customers that she was serving because of this antagonistic relationship she had with this account manager. So I think it's really, really important to hire people that get it, that understand the culture of your organization, that carry the character that you want them to present to the marketplace, and then you can train them the skills. You can give them the skills. You can they ought to come with some, but you're gonna train them. One of the other things I think is really important is setting up those clear expectations, again, from top down, and having them be a part of your KPIs, if you will. One of my KPIs when I came to Novation was we needed to change our renewal rates. We had to bring them up. We have been through several seasons of our products. It is amazing what we were doing 16 years ago, but we got pigeonholed into a space that now is an emerging market, which is fantastic for us, and I'd be happy to talk to any of you about it later. But we've had to be real specific about what we were doing. So setting up those objectives and those KPIs that say, you know, this is what we expect. These are the things you're going to do. An example of that might be setting up a call frequency for your customer. And giving your teams templates for what they should be trying to discuss. It is more important that they're developing their relationship with the customer than it is that they answer the questions on the template. It's more important that they're developing the relationship with their customer than it is that they're answering the questions on the template. I've seen in other organizations where people were so bent on you've got to answer these questions that they forgot to listen. And that takes coaching, and that takes leadership, and it takes patience sometimes. So that culture is really important.
And where do you guys think you are now in sort of your journey, your organizations around customer experience? You say your initial stages, are you kind of working through?
We're probably, man, if I ever get there, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah.
Right. I think. I mean, realistically, I think it's always going to be a moving target because our marketplace changes so much. We're probably at about maybe 50 to 60%. We've turned over our inside sales teams. Because we did that by attrition and by some need, we were able to hire people all at one time and bring people in and train them in the methodology that we wanted to use. That was unfortunate that it happened the way that it did, but it's been a brilliant outcome because we're all talking in that same voice. So,
great.
Yeah, K-12 and field education grew through acquisition, which is really challenging when you're bringing cultures together and really squishing them together. Everybody has a different definition of quality. Everybody has a different definition of customer experience. And so I would say for us at Fuel Education, we're probably at the baseline perspective. I've been there about a year, and in my time, I've been very much focused on creating the baseline, changing the vernacular at work, right? Mm-hmm. Changing how we talk about our customers. Yeah. He talked about hiring the right people, also empowering the people in terms of the people who are on the phones, giving them the ability just to kind of change the conversations that they're having, and as opposed to being the order takers, being the listeners, giving them the power to be able to answer a lot of those questions. So for us, we're very much at the beginning of probably a pretty significant hill. Mm-hmm. And you know, the biggest difference and I said this before, is it has to come from the top. If your most senior people are not bought into this, the smartest, hardest working people in this room, it will not necessarily be as effective. Right. Because you then create a very effective silo within your group.
You're the only one that can answer the question, as opposed to empowering your team. Right.
And so it has to start there. So for Fuel Education, that's where we're starting. We're starting with changing the vernacular. We're managing up, we're managing sideways, we're managing down. We're taking the baseline, creating a common vision, communicating that vision out. We're going to have signs that'll hang all over our office with the vision and the pillars, and just trying to get some energy around it. And then giving everybody that the baseline from what the customer effort score I talked about. And then it's everybody's goal. Every person is accountable for their bonuses, and their compensation is tied to the customer effort score and the client satisfaction.
The other, if I may just add to this, the thing I'd probably want to challenge each of you with, and I don't know where you all are within your organization, is you have to decide if your organization is more about making a difference or about making the renewal. And the renewal is important, right? I mean, that's you can't be strong and you can't be generous unless you're making money. But you have to decide if you're about making a difference. And again, back to the authenticity and the relationship. If you're doing the right things and you're doing them for the right reasons, and you've got that cultural heart, the revenue, the strategies you can do, you can make a difference. I just challenge you to make sure that your focus is on making a difference and not just on getting the renewal. Does that make sense?
It's the why versus the how.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me pause for a minute and bring in the audience a bit here and ask if any of you would sort of like to share or just comment on this dynamic that Lisa and Ken have been speaking to a bit. Have any of you, are you in the initial stages of a customer experience focus for your organization? Anything you would like to share as it relates to your learnings as you've gone through that before I turn back to the panel? How many of you have overtly, so we have a question in the back.
In the back.
While we walk the mic back, just how many of you would sort of say you've overtly focused on customer experience as sort of a pillar of your overall business strategy? Okay, so some, couple, not 4 or 5 people, okay.
Do you perceive it as customer service or a holistic approach? Yes?
Let's take a question in the back.
So it's not a question, it's a comment. John Edelson, Vocabulary Spelling City. We claim, so I'm the president of the company, we claim to live or die by customer experience, and for it to be a total focus. We think of our support organization as our marketing organization, and that every customer interaction, every email, tweet, or phone call is a make or break. So in that sense, we've totally bought in. The really hard part, and the part that we struggle with day in and day out, is that customers mostly don't interact with us interpersonally. They interact with our software. Right. And getting our software to feel slick and helpful and full of features which are there at the moment they need them, along with any support or training at the moment to need it. This is really, really hard. And this is the sort of thing we most struggle with, that there's terrible trade-offs and enormous investments in front and back end technology to make that feel right. And that's the reason, in our case, that we aren't anywhere near being where we think we should be, and the sort of stuff we struggle with day to day. Plus, we end up with trade-offs on whether we fix that in the short run Or is it time to completely rewrite the back end? What do we do about the fact that we're mostly still a Flash company and we got to get to HTML5 fast? It's trying to get it all done, and it's the same core people working on it.
John, it's interesting. One of the things you just mentioned, you talked about the software and being kind of making sure that it's really techno. And when I talked earlier, I talked about minimum expectations. And I used Craigslist as a perfect example of a website that, if any of you have used it, it's god ugly. I mean, it's just, it is not pretty, and yet, I don't know how many of you use Craigslist. It's really effective. I mean, it accomplishes the goal simplistically and intuitively, yet it's not pretty. There's nothing about it that would have the zing to it. And so when you think about where you're spending your energy around the customer experience, it's not necessarily about the bells and whistles. People find effectiveness in just meeting their basic expectations. Craigslist has done a phenomenal job of creating meeting customers' expectations at the minimal level consistently and effectively. And so we get caught up on making it pretty, and we get caught up in making it effective. Have you guys seen the tools our school districts use? I mean, some of them are things that they've created themselves, and they think they're the most brilliant things in the world. And so, not getting caught on perfect, our definition of perfect, and really thinking about what is the minimum expectations our customers have for us, delivering that consistently and effectively is more important than anything else we do.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
We have a couple questions here, Dirk.
I think you mentioned about let me just make sure it's the user effort score, you said? Customer effort score.
Customer effort score.
Again, we use something called the user interface score. Again, what we go by is what are the 5 things that we want the app to do or the product to do, and then ask people to, just go by it. I just want to see, is that the same, or because the term is obviously new to me, so is there anything? And also a follow-up question to that is, obviously you asked 2 questions to them. One is, how would you rate the current experience on a scale of 1 to 7? But then what was your expectations on a scale of 1 to 7? I just wanted to see, would anybody not rate 1 when you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what did you expect the product to do in terms of the effort on a 1 to 7? Wouldn't pretty much everybody say, I want it to be easy? So
it's a good question. Think about it from the different types of products. So if I'm a student and I'm taking a class, let's say I'll use higher education as an example that we can all probably relate to. If I'm going to go get my PhD, do I expect getting my PhD and completing a paper to be a 1? I hope not. I would hope anybody who's completed any type of work within completing a course, the ability to, how easy it is for us to do that shouldn't be a 1. And most customers would tell you it's probably not a 1. It would probably be a 3 or a 4. So do I want to get to a 1? Probably not. And so there's probably pieces. I know within our products we have enrolling customers, enrolling the students in their area. That's 30-some kids. Do I expect that to be easy? Some people do. Some people fully expect that I'm going to have to actually enter in those students' names, validate the information, and some districts don't. So it really depends on what the piece is. You would be surprised how many people are fine with a 3, believe it or not. And it's not, so if you think of the customer effort score and what you talked about in user experience, the user experience is getting into a lot of detail in terms of your 5 areas where you want them to accomplish. This is more holistic in saying, how would you rate your ability to work with us? How easy is it? How would you rate your effectiveness in being able to do X, Y, and Z? And so you're not getting into, did you like this feature? Did it accomplish this? It's, okay, was it, how hard did we make it? Amazon is the perfect example of making everything easy. I mean, I can sit in meetings, not that I would ever do this, but I can sit in meetings and Christmas shop. Right? And I can do everything and it's paid for, and my ability to do that is so unbelievably easy versus, some of the other stores where you have to enter your credit card information. And so you're basically, how many barriers do we put in front of our customers to actually work with us? And you think about relationships, and I agree with Ken completely, especially in education because it's such a relationship business, but I never talk to a single human being in an Amazon. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but you try and talk to a single human being in Amazon. But the experience is still exceptional, based on my definition of it.
Hi, my name is Chris Contini, Chief Product Officer at On-Course Systems for Education. We've got 9 different products that are web-based SaaS model. Some are used by teachers, some are used by secretaries, some are used by guidance counselors, some are used by superintendent. And we have an initiative that we're starting that we're referring to internally as our optimization initiative, so that we can start to go out to our school districts and show them what they're not using, what they're not aware of. So the customer effort score, thank you for that, because I think that'll help that initiative. But the question I had for you was, we have an internal debate sometimes with some of the other owners of the company about a term we call over-servicing the customer. And I just wanted to ask you if that's ever come up in discussions internally with your organization. Is that possible? Can it be a negative? And how do you address that? If
is that coming from your finance guys?
Yeah, usually the bean counters, but the numbers guys usually say we're over-servicing the customer. And so I just wanted to get any feedback you had on that.
Great question.
Yeah. We've as I mentioned earlier, we did a time study on our account management team to understand exactly where they were spending their time, and probably consistent with many of you, 80% of our revenue comes from 20% of our customers. Go figure. But that leaves a heck of a lot of accounts that are tiny. And yet the amount of investment of the account management team time is exactly the same. So one of the things that we've been investigating, I haven't solved for yet, is how to automate some of those little things that they can do to make sure that their experience is fantastic. Because you can't afford to spend the same amount of time for some of the little guys but you still value them. Right? Because they're your reference points. They're the little guys that are going to grow into, and in this industry, they're going to move. Right? So they're going to be somewhere else soon. So you have to manage them. So if you're on the sales side, I'll say it's your obligation. If you're on the corporate side, I'm going to say it's your obligation to take care of them to the best of your ability. For your finance guys, you have to say, in my opinion, you have to say, we're going to look for the most efficient way to take care of them without compromising the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know one of the things we've done at FuelEd is actually our service is based on, if you think about it, our low income, our low revenue customers. And then we've identified a different service for the top 200. Because, so I'm all about profitability, and so making sure that we start at what actually represents the majority of our customers, not the majority of our revenue, but the majority of our customers are actually the little guys. And so how do you make the self-service work? Most of our infrastructure today that we're working towards is actually building the self-service model to make our customers interact with us less. And then all of the touchy client services, very hand-holding, is for our top 200 customers or top whoever customers, where they have kind of the VIP package, if you will, that we take them a different route.
Great questions from the audience. I don't know if there was one more, Derek. We'll take one
Very
more,
back.
then we'll pick up one. We'll keep going.
You're picking favorites, Steve.
Hi, Paula Reed with Discovery Education. You were just asking earlier about the customer experience. Is it this, the strategy and how we have it? Is it mostly so that we can build a relationship, or is this renewal, or however it would be? I just want to say one thing that we use is what we call Discovery Magic, and constantly we're looking at how to create an experience above and beyond the sales interaction experience. Going back to our brand constantly, whether it be reach back and we do a dinner and it surrounds Shark Week, or we bring animals into a school district. All of this is value add, but it gives the opportunity for them to look at us as doing well for the, doing good for the students, and making sure that the teachers have an experience about our brand before we come in and then start talking about how we can build a partnership. So what seems or appears to be over-servicing, I would say, is building those building blocks so that they look at you as a partner and they look at you as a business entity that isn't coming in to try to sell, but actually embracing what their efforts are and helping them move forward with their students. So, it should be part of the strategy, part of building the relationship, but it is all a part of the strategy on how you move forward with those folks.
Yeah, and Discovery's done a really great job with that. I have to admit, there's been a handful of times where I've seen some of the work that Discovery Education's done. I've been very impressed. So you guys should take a look at what they've done. And I've never met this person, Joe, but I've always been very impressed with what they've done.
I think we had one more. Greg Driven, I think, had a question.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Greg Driven, and my organization is called Startup Marketing Team, and I work with a bunch of virtual freelancers and do a bunch of marketing activities in the field. My question is, it's a comment and a question. You'd mentioned managing up and managing down and managing sideways. I guess I've found most organizations I've worked for, everyone talks about the importance of customer experience, but I think sometimes it ends up on the cutting room floor in terms of budget and others. So I guess my question is, any secret strategies to build consensus and get more money to do the things that we want to do to improve customer experience?
Get more money, I don't know. I mean, so realistically, it is a cultural change, or maybe it's not in your organization. In our organization, it very clearly starts with our mission statement. One of the things that our leadership team has just gone back through is a business planning session where we've been very specific to say very specifically what we do, why we do it, what markets we're going to serve, and how we're going to go about that, what our process is for that. The need for that is really compelling, not just for us because we get exposed to, oh yeah, we could do that, right? The squirrel, but because our teams need that. They need to know where true north is, right? And so it's really important that the leadership team embrace the need for a holistic approach to the customer experience, and that the leadership team communicate that throughout the organization early and often. And the reason that's so important is because when people get in the run of their daily experience, they have to be able to look up and breathe and go, I'm doing the right thing because I'm following, I know where I'm going, and I know what my role is in that. One of the things that I would challenge every one of us to do is to be very specific in setting objectives for our teams. Not because we want to measure activities, but because people want to be successful. And if you don't set clear objectives for your team that align to that strategy, your teams will never be successful because they won't know what it looks like. So I think that's really important in that.
Yeah, so the opposite side of that, from the financial perspective, I think about it from, so I work in an organization that the upper management cares a lot about the numbers, profitability, financials, and so talking their language is key. So much of the client experience can actually be tied to revenue. And so it's finding the dollars, actually showing them on paper how, this can drive a percent increase, which is it's one of the reasons I love the customer effort score. It's just because it's tangible. They can see it, right? I can take my customer effort score, expectations versus reality, to my senior leadership team and go, look, and they can see the difference. And then I can actually associate it to how does that then impact retention. And then I can look at my retention scores and then actually showing how the difference in the customer effort score, changes in an effort score, actually impacts retention and impacts some of the referral activities that we have going on. So talking from an up perspective, it's all about the numbers. I mean, I hate to say it, right? Everybody knows that. But it's how does it actually align to driving more revenue. Sideways and down, it's actually less about that. They have to, it's showing them the scores. creates that pain. I mean, I have Matt Camacho, who runs my product team at Fuel Ed, and when we ran the customer effort score the first time, it had sticker shock, right? I mean, it was like, oh wow. In some cases, we're like, oh, we thought we were much worse than that, thank God. But in other cases, we were like, wow, look what we're doing to it. And we actually split it by different types of users. We had it by, now we had it by student, by teachers, by administrators, by superintendents, and we could see how all of them felt. And so from our perspective, we actually saw that the decision makers were happy with us, the users weren't, which is a short-term win, but a really long-term loss. And so with that, we were able to show our leadership, hey, if we don't get in front of this problem now, when these users become the administrators and become the decision makers, we're in trouble.
Great point. We have one more question out here. Derek, we can get to it real quick.
Actually, it wasn't a question as much as a comment. I work in a lot of organizations. My name is Lisa Ramirez, by the way. I work as the UX director for a small custom development software shop. I've worked in a lot of different organizations, and what I found is that sometimes you have to do a grassroots activity. You know, you have to do a little bit more above and beyond, take the extra time, find people that are with you and align with your vision or your goal, and do that activity and show value. And oftentimes showing value and doing that helps other people see that there's some possibility in the activity you want to do. So particularly with UX, you know, not until really the last 5 years has it been a buzzword that's gotten a lot of support organizationally. So what we would do is we would just go ahead and run our own little usability studies. Not a lot of money, not a lot of incentives, you know, for our user base, but it was something that we could bring back and say, hey, look at this video of people using this, or look at this report we put together, or look when we showed them an alternate model, how much better it performs. And so sometimes it has to be a grassroots activity. Now, it doesn't always convince the leadership, but, you know, I think if you can show compelling evidence and you are passionate about it and you find people that can work with you organizationally, especially across divisions, it can have a really big impact.
Well, one thing, and one of the reasons we set the session up the way we did, we don't have a PowerPoint slide, is because it's really about, I used the word, Rob used this morning, crowd solving. If you're going through this, don't go through it alone. And I don't mean through your own company, go through it with each other. I can say that I identified a handful of companies in and out of the industry who were leveraging client experience, who were doing the customer effort score and how they'd implemented it, how the problems they fell for and the problems that we fell through, so that we learned from each other. So find the individuals, the companies who are truly dedicated to it, not ones that it's not just the, yeah, that's important, let's cut it. Conversations, and partner with them and meet with them and find out what they're doing, what's working, what's not working. It's been, I can honestly say, a huge aspect to what we've been able to do.
So you guys have had a lot of initial success and continue to build success. Are there things you would counsel the group to be wary of as they embark on their, some folks sound like they may just be starting with an overt customer experience process, others are maybe midway, but things that you guys have learned that have just, you know, can we shortcut a couple mistakes here that you guys have lived through as you've evolved through it?
Okay.
You're perfect, I know, but...
Yeah, so I mean, kind of the things I would say is, you know, and you've heard me say it, your people matter. The people you put in front of as you train people, as you set expectations, you need to model, your organization needs to model and set expectations for what you want them, how you want them to act, and how you want them to behave. Going back to an earlier question about getting finance on board, when was the last time you took them on a sales call? Right? Put them in a school. Let them see the impact of your product. Let them talk to your customers when it's not, I'm asking you, where's your renewal? You know, get them out there mid-year. Recognize that your work doesn't stop when you get the PO, and recognize that the sales process is integral to the success of the implementation process. Sometimes there's a disconnect there. So make sure your sales teams recognize that there has to be a continuity to that experience all the way across the organization.
Yeah, so to build on that, think of, again, you should walk around to anybody in your organization and ask them what the expected client experience is, and they should all have the same answer.
Yeah.
If they don't, and I can tell you they don't right now in my organization, but we're getting there, which is, you know, everybody from the people who are developing the product to the curriculum to the client services folks answering the phone, they should be able to tell you the 3 things or whatever, however many pillars that you want to define that define that expectation. If they're different, then guess what? You're creating a different experience with each of those areas. And this goes, if you think, the one big thing that I think was really kind of an aha moment for me when I started this process a couple years back, which is we think so much about the customers we talk to. Chances are you're talking to less than 2% of your customers.
Oh, yeah.
Less than 2%. The majority of your customers are interacting with your websites, they're interacting with your software, they're interacting with whatever systems, your billing systems, the 100 other systems. The majority of your customers will never talk to a human being in your company. And so don't stop your client experience at the people part. It is absolutely foundational, but you have to think about it in terms of how you deliver this piece and functionality. If my customer experiences are, fun, engaging, and easy, all right? So let's assume those are my 3. Can I look at every place that my customer touches us, in any place, and have I created a fun, engaging, and easy process? And how do we measure that? And find the measuring tools. Customer effort is one. The Net Promoter Score is another. There's other measures that you can use to tie it. But you need to be able to know how you're doing today and how you're moving that needle.
So we have about 5 minutes left, give or take. Before I ask our panel to close with a couple thoughts on how you can implement this or begin to implement this in your organization, I want to see if there's any last questions we can answer for the audience. With one up front here.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm loud usually. Never be quiet. I'm Michelle with Lab Aids. My question is, we have a very different text. We don't go by books. A teacher can't pick up our textbook and teach us. You have to understand our philosophy and how we have a handle on education. Our problem, our challenge, is teachers move, and they move quickly. They might stay a couple semesters and they're gone. Well, then the next teacher has come in, they've not gone through professional development, they don't understand our product, so now they don't like us, and they're complaining, and so we have a really hard time. What do we do to keep, so we know who's in that classroom? I mean, the manpower to be able to have our sales reps.
Where is your disconnect? Is your disconnect with, are you selling directly to the teacher, or are you selling directly to?
We're usually selling to a district, then parses out. Often we'll sell directly to a school, and then we love to do that. And then we have more power and know who our customer is.
Yeah.
But when you go through a district, you lose who has your product.
Yeah.
We don't know, and if they have a quick turnover, we're losing that experience because we no longer have an email address. We don't know how to contact the new person. We don't even know if there is a new person or the person left. So, does anybody have any ideas on how?
Frankly, I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. That is how do I and you referenced to it earlier, is my relationship with my chooser, my buyer, is great, but my user relationship struggles. I don't have that touch with them. One of the things that we're in the process right now of doing is creating some more social campaigns to reach out to our customer base. I don't have the answer for it, but it is a massive challenge because districts are protective of those access points, and you have to be careful. They have to be careful. I'm sorry. To make sure that they maintain the integrity of the separation of those relationships and protect their teachers. So,
I think part of the onus is on you in terms of how you build the product, right? And the other onus is around how do you get more ownership at the school district level? I don't know if you've implemented ambassador programs where you have groups of teachers who have used it who can really be the people who are championing and rallying that.
Sure.
So given the fact that you know that that's the case, did you develop that with that in mind? Right? So did you define the customer experience as needing to be something that is easily changed, that can take a customer and flip it out. So that would need to be, in your case, a customer pillar that as you're developing and defining and marketing would become part of that, which is, obviously you have what you have, so you need to do with what you need to do now. But then as you're thinking about your future roadmap, I would definitely think about, if you understand that's how your customer buys and how they use it, you should build that as a customer pillar.
Yeah.
Great counsel. So we are at the end. I wanted to have our panelists provide a quick, just something discernible that you guys can take away, if you will, if you haven't already taken away lots of great insight. And there's a couple things, top 3 things that both Lisa and Ken think you should be thinking about as you leave this session and you sort of move down the path of customer experience in your organization. Ken, do you want to lead it off?
Yeah, I think it goes, again, I kind of sound repetitive. Maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. It's make sure your company, the culture of your company represents what you want your customer experience to be. How your groups interact with one another will be representative of how they support your customers. If you have areas that are problematic, I have maybe it's a personal thing. If you've got something you got to fix, if it's imminent, make it immediate, because you can't afford for your customer experience to go bad, and you can end up in a bad way in a hurry. So your people, your culture, you've got to figure out, you've got to define what you want your culture to be, and then you've got to build for it. You've got to hire for it, and you've got to set expectations for your teams. Everybody that touches your customer, everybody that might touch your customer, set those expectations for those folks so they understand what that experience is going to look like, and make it part of what their compensation plan is, or how their annual review. Make it so many times people make an annual review and they make that customer support experience, they make it 5%, something really trivial, that like if you don't do well on that, it's okay. Ultimately, it's the biggest thing, it's the only thing that's generating revenue, is that client experience. So you've got to make it a more substantial component of that. And then force your teams to build relationships. Force people out of their comfort zone. Nothing good ever happened from a comfort zone, right? So just just push your teams, push your leadership team to step out of what they do on a daily basis, get in front of the customer, hear their voice, and if they do, then more than likely they'll come back with an energized perspective. So,
yeah, and don't try and boil the ocean. I mean, this is one of those things that is huge. You look at it and go, oh my gosh, you have to start from the top down. And without the top buy-in, I've not seen it effectively work. That doesn't mean it can't, but I haven't seen it yet. But it might feel very overwhelming, like you have this huge thing. And so don't necessarily boil the ocean. One of the reasons to use some of the baseline metrics is to figure out where to start. Mm-hmm. Because you can't do it all. And honestly, you should probably focus on just a few right off the bat, and then put a whole team against it. Like if we say these are the 3 biggest issues that are causing fail for our customers, then put together a cross-department team that says, hey, this is the issue. In 20 days, go get it fixed. And let them focus on it for 20 days straight, and then have them come back with a solution. And so you're not necessarily boiling the ocean. So
it's really important.
It is, because it becomes so big, and then everybody, when you start getting executive buy-in, they're like, oh my gosh, there's this problem, and there's this problem, and this problem. And you have to be able to quantify it and prioritize it, or you will simply not be able to do anything. And again, it's the defining the what. Ken just talked about this. Don't leave it to chance. You can hire all the right people, but it has to be written. It has to be documented. It has to be said. It's kind of cheesy. I don't know if any of you guys have the little cards that sit on your desks or little things in your wallet. But if you can't, walk around and ask folks in your organization what you want their customer experience to be. Do it now, and then do it 6 months from now, and then do it 6 months from now. I know when I interview for jobs, I ask the same question of all the candidates, all the people I'm interviewing with, is what's the mission and vision of your customer? And I'm always so impressed, and it doesn't happen very often, is knowing that you're hearing the same answer. And actually, I did interview at Novation once, and probably one of the few companies I can honestly say everybody answered the same way. But most companies don't. And so making sure that you're consistent, don't leave that customer expectation up to chance. You should define it and then make sure it's consistent across every one of your groups and everybody's bought into it.
Well, Lisa and Ken, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists today.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
A great session, and thanks so much for your time, guys. Thanks for your insight. Much appreciated. I think we are now